The Democrats said, hey, Republicans are getting all this corporate money. We want it too. Let's go out and get it. And let's forget about the people who are working 50 or 60 hours a week. So you're sitting out there somewhere in the Midwest. You can't afford health care. Maybe your job went to China and you're earning half of what you used to make. Your kid can't afford to go to college. And you're looking at people on television doing all of their stuff. And you are saying, who the hell gives a damn about me?
Bernie Sanders was a guest on Bill Maher's show Real Time, and Bernie talked about a lot of the core issues that he loves to talk about, how the middle class has been destroyed in the United States. He also got into student loan debt. Bill Maher pushed back on some of what Bernie Sanders had to say. Kyle Kulinski on the show Secular Talk broke all this down. Check this out.
Maher's going to kind of try to debate Bernie here a little bit on student loan debt reduction, but it ends in a fascinating way. So let's watch.
I know you were advocating at the Supreme Court, I think it was last week, right? Because, or maybe it was this week, that the Supreme Court is looking at Biden's giveaway to people who own debt.
Giveaway is your term, not my term.
Well, they have college debt, loan, yeah. Okay, and we're going to give them money.
We're going to forgive debt.
Well, we're arguing about the same thing, but there's no argument. We're giving the money away. Okay.
I say Bill Maher is a little annoying. A little is an understatement, because he acts like he doesn't know what Bernie's objecting to there, but he knows what Bernie's objecting to. Bernie's objecting to the framing, like it's a giveaway. That's the framing of that is like it's sort of unearned. It's a gift. That's the framing of it. And Bernie's position, and my position as well, is like there should have been student loan debt in the first place. So I wouldn't categorize it as a giveaway. I would say, like, this should have been part of the basic social contract, right? Like, when we have Medicare for all, when we have universal health care, is it going to be fair to call that a giveaway of health care to Americans? No, it's like, this is how it should have been all along. Now, Maher knows that, but he's playing dumb. Like, oh, we're saying the same thing. No, you're not, because the way you're framing it is loaded. It's a loaded way to frame it. And I would argue kind of a dishonest way to frame it.
Okay, so I just want to read you this. Again, this is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey, student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They
I love Bernie's face here.
Admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are very likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money, like I just did, but...
Well, let me respond to that in two ways, Bill. You're talking about giveaways. Under Trump, the Congress voted for $1 trillion in tax breaks for the richest people in this country and the largest corporations. That's a giveaway. We just increased military spending with very little discussion, I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too?
Yes, absolutely correct. Absolutely right. All right.
But that's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's right? Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism. That's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military industrial complexes. All right, but anyhow.
Right.
All right. So when you talk about giveaways, you have major corporations in this country that make billions in profit, don't pay a nickel in taxes. Billionaires have an effective tax rate lower than that of a truck driver or a nurse. You have a generation. You talk about this younger generation right now. I got around the country and I talked to a lot of people. You know, I don't know anything about that poll, but I can tell you, I've talked to nurses who are working their asses off, doing the right thing. They leave school $70,000 in that. They can't afford now to get married and have children. They can't afford the housing that they desperately need. So the truth is, you got a generation that everything being equal, the younger generation will have a lower standard of living than their parents. You and I, and I'm a little older than you, can remember 50 years ago, what did it cost to go to the University of California? Remember?
$50.
Yeah.
500.
Virtually free. City University of New York.
Right.
Virtually free. And right now.
First thing that I would say here is no matter what you think of Bernie Sanders, whether you like Bernie Sanders' politics or not, he demonstrates here in this interview with Bill Maher how sharp he is. So Bernie Sanders is now, he's older than Joe Biden, and he's also older than Donald Trump. And Bernie Sanders is sharper than either one of them. He does not show any of the cognitive decline that obviously Joe Biden has, but also Donald Trump shows as well. But a thing that Bernie Sanders points out here is how cheap college used to be. And that's not just a result of college being more expensive because of inflation. What not many older people who went to college decades ago understand is that their college education was heavily subsidized by the government. So you talk about socialism, people, complaining about socialism. In California, there was a time before Reagan where the state schools were free. But state schools around the country, even up until the early 90s, were as much as 90% subsidized by the government. And that's the thing that Bernie Sanders is pointing out here to Bill Maher. College was so much cheaper in the past because the government was paying for it on the front end.
Now these young people are leaving school deeply in debt. They're struggling economically. They deserve a break.
So to sum that up, he's saying, first of all, I wouldn't call it a giveaway to these students. But second of all, even if it was a giveaway, it's still based. That's his argument. And look, I totally agree. I agree with that. And he listed off some of the stuff there, but we spend $7 trillion in Iraq when all is said and done. $2 trillion in Afghanistan. Trillions of dollars on a Wall Street bailout. Billions of dollars every year in subsidies for oil companies like ExxonMobil when they're all...
And great points here by Kyle Kulinski. Personally, I'd rather, not everybody would agree, but personally, I'd rather have my tax dollars going to educate people, to educate college students, than to have trillions of dollars go to wars in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
Already phenomenally profitable. The list goes on and on of the stuff that we give away to the wealthy and powerful. And that's just business as usual. That's just standard operating procedure. That's just the status quo. And, nobody blinks on that front. And here we have a rare situation where it's like, hey, maybe we should help out like students who are, who are struggling right now. And all of a sudden, all the rhetoric about, they're parasites, they're moochers, they're leeching, this is a giveaway. All that comes roaring back. And it's just fundamentally dishonest. The whole conversation is fundamentally dishonest. It's not a giveaway because there never should have been student loans in the first place. But even if it was a giveaway, I don't care. It's based. These are people who deserve a break. 90% of the people being helped by the student loan debt reduction make $75,000 a year or less. So also this notion that, it's helping elites, it's helping the rich. It's just totally bogus. It's total nonsense. You shouldn't have to go into massive amounts of debt to try to improve your life, to give you a shot at reasonable success. And that's Bernie's point. So Maher, look, I don't know what happened to Bill Maher. I guess he's never been wonderful if you really take all of his policy ideas and put them on paper. But there was a time when he sounded more left. In the Bush era, he would just bash them over the Iraq war relentlessly, and I was there for that. It was good. I enjoyed that. And he supported Bernie in 2015 and 2016 and made a lot of the same arguments Bernie makes. And then at some point along the line, he went from supporting Bernie in 2016 to supporting Amy Klobuchar in 2020. Something about the Trump era broke his brain. It happened to a lot of people. And so now, to even bring up that garbage poll is just astonishing, man. It really is. Because when you look at, generational wealth, millennials, for example, are just getting destroyed. Gen X had so much more money at this age. The baby boomers had so much more money. And right now they have like almost all of the national wealth. And so, yeah, to try to relieve some of the burden on these students is absolutely vital. It's crucial. It's necessary. And by the way, it'll have reverberating effects that help the economy. So anyway, let's see what Mark.
That's one good point that Kyle Kulinski makes here. Like, people can be against student loan debt for forgiveness, whatever. But if I owned a car dealership, I would be down on my knees praying every night that student loans would get forgiven, because then you would have millions more people who could afford to buy a car.
Mark's reaction is,
do you ever feel like you're being watched? Hide your online life with Surfshark.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But in the book, you say you feel like the Democratic Party.
So he said, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Because Bill Maher understands that, like he's saying, the University of California or whatever was $50. He knows that he got a really cheap education back in the 70s or, whenever Bill Maher went to school. So he understands Bernie Sanders' point here perfectly. A lot of people don't know how heavily subsidized college education was back then, to where it was almost free. You know, people tell these stories about how they worked 10 hours a week at the student union or whatever and were able to pay for college and not have any debt. Yeah, because the government was paying for most of it. The government isn't now.
I think Bernie just changed his mind in real time. No pun intended using the phrase real time. But obviously he loaded the question with all these terms and framing that suggested he's not in favor of student loan debt reduction. And in fact, we covered in the past, he was against student loan debt reduction. And then here he said, I couldn't agree more. Bernie Sanders just changed Bill Maher's mind in real time. That's awesome. That is awesome. And it shows you somewhere down in there for Maher, somewhere down in there, there's still shreds of some basic lefty ideas.
You take your shots at them, and you caucus with them and you run as one, but you're not completely part of them. Right. You say they feel like they're abandoned their cause to the beautiful people. Who are the beautiful people? I'm guessing it's not
Bill.
us.
You're looking really beautiful tonight here in L.A.
Me? Thank you, Bernie.
But here's the point. The point that I was making is when FDR was president, when Truman was president, even when JFK was president, you go out on the street and you say to people, which party represents the working class of America? Most people, I think, would have said the Democratic Party.
Correct.
All right. Today you go out on the street and that is not the sentiment. In fact, the Republican Party probably has more adherents than the Democrats.
How did that happen?
I'll tell you how it happened. It happened because 30 years ago, the Democrats said, hey, Republicans are getting all this corporate money. We want it too. Let's go out and get it. And let's forget about the people who are working 50 or 60 hours a week. So you're sitting out there somewhere in the Midwest. You can't afford health care. Maybe your job went to China and you're earning half of what you used to make. Your kid can't afford to go to college. And you're looking at people on television doing all of their stuff. And you are saying, who the hell gives a damn about me? All right? Who cares what my life is about? Who's addressing the crises facing my life, the pain that I'm experiencing? We have something, I don't know if you're familiar with the expressions called diseases of despair.
Of course.
All right. And what the doctors tell us, we have a life expectancy above and beyond COVID, which is in decline. It's in decline because people feel hopeless. Their jobs are taking them nowhere, worried about their kids, and they're turning to alcohol, drugs, and even suicide. All right. We've got to restore hope to the American people. Working class are the majority of people in this country. They are hurting. After 50 years of exploding technology, they're earning less than they did before. All right.
You sound like you're running again. No? Third time?
So Bernie Sanders is absolutely correct here. We have two parties, and regardless of what team you're on, you think your team is correct. The Republicans and the Democrats have totally sold out over the decades to big business, to the military-industrial complex, to the pharmaceutical companies, to the fossil fuel companies, and all of them, both sides, Democrats and Republicans, or the vast, vast majority of them, they're doing insider trading. They're just trying to make as much money as they possibly can to steal, essentially, even though all of it's legal for them because these laws that they've created for themselves, to get as much money as they possibly can for themselves. Democrats, Republicans, they don't care about regular people. They don't care about you and me. And Bernie Sanders is one of the few who has pointed this out for decades, really, and he's pointing it out here again on Bill Maher's show. And I don't know that Kyle Kulinski is right that Bernie Sanders changed Bill Maher's mind about student loan debt. He may have just agreed to move on to the next thing because it's TV and they have a shortened time frame. But Bernie Sanders is pointing out the real plights of Bernie Sanders is pointing out the real plight of the middle class in America, and that's something that he has always adhered to. Whether or not Bill Maher agrees with that or not doesn't really matter. So what do you think? Do you agree with what Kyle Kulinski was saying here? Do you agree with Bill Maher? Do you agree with Bernie? Do you think they're all wrong? If you like this content, if you want to see more of this and help me to be able to create more content like this, make sure to give me a like and subscribe, comment on this video. I'll see you in the next one.